So welcome to my EdCamp, and it's a virtual EdCamp, and it's by educators, for educators and parents and administrators and the general public who supports all things education. So the information that you get today, if you will, please go and share it with all of your friends and family members. So I am Dr. Ruth Alisha Hill, and I have lead learning partners with me today, and you've seen them on the flyer, and I'll jump into introducing them in a second. But I really want to give you some tips on video conferencing first. When you entered, you were automatically muted. However, if you want to collaborate with others, please feel free to use the chat box, which is below. Also, if you like to raise your hand or you hear something you like, give a thumbs up. It'll disappear after a while whenever you try to take the thumbs down. But we are really, really excited to have you here today. And hopefully you will take away some powerful skills, strategies, and activities that you can start using right away. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of jump into the reason why we're here. And our whole purpose for being here is really our student success. Our students are our future. Sounds really cliche-ish, but they really are our future. We don't know who will be in the White House next. By the time some of us get to be in our 60s or 70s or 80s, there'll be a whole new leadership, a whole new way of thinking. And the times now have taught us that, you know, there's a need for transformation and there's a need for change. So as we model for our students, we really have to come together and bring our best thinking to the forefront so we can be innovative and transformative. But at the same time, we want to really focus on providing an avenue or platform where this EdCamp is set up so that you get some pocket-sized learning around that skill or strategy. So this isn't a full conference that some of you might be used to if you're an educator. Like, we really are coming in to give you some powerful skills and strategies that you can implement right away. Our other focus is to provide an opportunity for collaboration. Sometimes we're working in silos, sometimes we're parenting in silos, and sometimes we're leading in silos. But this is really to come together and really collaborate. So at the end of each facilitator's session, we're going to ask if there are any comments or questions. Please feel free to put it in the chat box if you hear something they're talking about, or if you have a comment or if you have a question. That's what that's for. So we're going to have that space and time after each person presents. And then at the end, we really want to find out what are some more of your needs. We want to be able to empathize with all of our stakeholders. And as we continue to do this and come together and provide our best thinking, we want to make sure that we're meeting needs and that we're actually expanding ourselves as well. So here's our quick agenda. Again, this session is recorded. If you register, you will receive an email that will include the link to the recording. But we're really going to start out with introductions, and then we'll go into the learning session where you'll hear from each facilitator. Today we have 5, 6 including myself, and then we'll have a question and answer and a closing period. The question and answer is what we call an unconference. So at the end of the session, right before the closing, we're going to allow anybody who's doing something great, and it doesn't have to be complex, it could be simple. Most of the time simple is better, but to have the space to share. So that's where our agenda is, and that's where we're focused on today. So here are our lead learning partners. We have myself, of course. I'm Alisha Hill again, Dr. Ruth, and I'll be talking to you today about tips for teaching your kids at home and when resources are limited. Our next presenter is Dr. Tony Burks, and he will be really giving us some strategies and tips around children, like how are the children checking in. We have Miss Christina Rogers. I'm going to switch her out by request with Troy Curry, and I'll introduce him in a second. But Christina Rogers will be speaking with us today about strategies around being socially distant but emotionally connected. So how to support SEL in a virtual environment. Let me make sure that everybody is muted. If you are on, and it's got it. So our next presenter is Mr. Marques Stewart, and he'll be talking to us today about learning without borders. Next, we have Virnilisa Printup, and she is going to speak with us around strategies and tips for supporting and leading professional learning in a virtual environment. And Troy Curry, who again has to go third. So Ms. Rogers, thank you for switching out and being flexible with us, but he's gonna go third, but he will be speaking with us about using the lessons learned from COVID-19 to reignite the educational experience as we know it. So I'm actually going to get ready to jump in right now, but before I do, I want to allow space for any questions or comments. Okay, so I'll go ahead and start out. Again, I wanted to provide you all with tips and strategies for teaching at home. So lots of times when we are trying to homeschool our own kids and work at the same time, it can be very difficult. But while I do this, I'm going to share my screen with you around these strategies. So I really want you, if you see my screen, if you can give me a nod, yes. Are you able to see it says advice for homeschool? A thumbs up or not? Great. All right. So I work in a district which is actually the largest in Georgia and the 12th largest in the state, but also I have my own students and I also have my own business as well. So some of the things that I hear from parents is around, you know, how can I support my kids when we don't have computers at home, or I haven't heard anything from the teacher, or our district has just, you know, ended school early. I don't have access to go get a packet or something like that. So we all have smartphones, and luckily with these smartphones, we can do a lot that we can do on the computer. But before we even get to that, we have to make sure that we make a plan with our students together. So again, these are just tips for teaching at home. So making a plan with your student involves a lot of sitting down with them, brainstorming, and thinking about their day ahead. Also giving them options, asking them what do they feel about their work or their task, how did they feel about learning, what are their subjects that they're stronger in, and then after doing that, really setting up time that you can check in with the teachers to talk to them about your student, what your child has said. Usually I would probably set weekly check-ins with teachers. Sometimes you hear feedback, oh, I haven't heard from any teachers, and I always say, you know, communication is two-way. So have you reached out? Teachers love to hear from parents. We want to hear from them so that we can work together. It is a partnership. Another strategy is to set family expectations. So I have two students at home with me, two kids. One is in 8th grade and one is in college. And so even my college kid had to come home. He had to move out of the dorms. And my 14-year-old, they stopped school maybe about 5 or 6 weeks ago. And so we've been in that virtual environment. But what we did was we sat down and we really talked about what are the expectations. So when do you want to be able to wake up? When do you want to be able to go to bed? What does your whole day of school look like? Where will you work? My expectation is that they actually come out of their bedrooms. They have desks in their bedrooms, but if they've been in there all day, we have to take a break. Nobody can work in their bed because beds and couches are like comfort zones. And so we're going to fall asleep. We're going to start texting. We're going to get on social media. But setting those family expectations and saying things in your out loud voice really helps create that environment that during this time, this is set aside time for learning. Another thing that I really want to hone in on is using free resources. So we said when resources are limited. So when things are limited, we have to use what we have at our fingertips. So I did create on my Learning Partner site a resource tab. And if you were to click on the resource tab at www.mylearningpartners.com, then you'll see support for students. When you open up support for students, you'll see a list of resources that are free. And most districts, get this, have provided tutoring services. So if you can't get in contact with the teacher, you can get in contact with a tutor. And some of those tutoring services are free. So if you were to go to my site and go to student support, then you will find instructional videos, you'll find learning games, and everything up there is free, or there's a free access pass to it. So I encourage you to please go out, look at the site. That resource repository is there. It's also there for teachers, it's there for district leaders, and it's also there for support staff. So to continue to help and grow as we develop. But I encourage you to research, because there are a lot of things out there that are free. If you're an educator on the call and you have a site that's your go-to, please put it in the chat box, especially if it's a free resource. If you have a Teachers Pay Teacher and you have free resources there, please put your link in the chat box and share with others. Also, I would say schedule breaks. It's really simple to say that, but it is very powerful to do so. Again, I have 2 kids at home with me, and working nonstop gives you brain fog. Students tend to disengage, but if we schedule breaks, then we have that breathing time. We can walk away, and it gives us a point, a goal to reach. If it's just flexible and spontaneous, then it's like, oh, what are we really doing? But keeping students on a schedule really helps with the learning process. Also, make space for grace. Sometimes, even though we have a schedule, it can be a lot. So allow your students to have the voice to say, okay, can we change this up? This is working for me, or it's not working for me, or today is just really hard. I'm really trying to plow through this. So making space for grace. Whenever there are mistakes made, or whenever we need to change things up a bit. So each one of us have about 5 minutes to present, and then we have 2 to 3 minutes of discussion time. I'm going to conclude right there. I was going to take you out to my site to show you the free resources, but I encourage you to go there. Give it about an hour, because the site did crash because we had a lot of people trying to log on and get the registration link. So I'm not able to show you that live, but are there any questions or comments that I can address for you around these tips for teaching your kids at home with limited resources? Okay, so that's the space for that. If you do have something that you like to add at the end or a comment, please put it in the comment box. And now I'm getting ready to introduce our next facilitator. So let me stop sharing. His name is Dr. Tony Lamair Burks. He has been an educator since 1993, and I'm going to turn it over to him so he can give you guys a lot more information about some of the great things that he's doing.
I actually want to go right into my talk. I would like to spend more time with that. I've been in education since Pluto was a planet, probably is the best way to say it. Delighted to be on this. So definitely delighted to be a part of this experience. So thank you for creating this opportunity for us. Let me just share this screen and get right down to it. When I entered education, can you see my screen? Yes. Okay, good. When I entered in education, I happened to stumble across this wonderful essay about the famed Maasai warriors. People know about their ability to just be ferocious and fierce, and they were quite surprised that this is how they would greet themselves, by asking, so how are the children, and how are the children? And the response that they sought was, the children are well. Well, this powerful story was captured and has been told in an essay that is on my website. So if you go to the website, you can download that. But the writer just talks about, if we were to take that question and start using it, if the president were to ask, and how are the children? If city council would ask, and how are the children? If we would ask every single day, and how are the children, how might things be? And I can tell you, in this season, with this pandemic, it's a powerful question to ask. And how are the children? But here's the thing about that notion of the children. I see that it was not showing. Let's do that again. Well, anyway, I'll go without that. At some point, I'll get it back up. But here's the thing. If you've been on an airplane, you know that the moment you get on the airplane, and you get situated, the flight attendants say, make sure that you check and get yourself situated. And in the event of an emergency, a mask will drop down. Please put it to your face, because the whole point is you got to take care of yourself before you can take care of someone else. So as important as it is to ask the question, and how are the children? It's also critically important to make sure that you take time and space to take care of you. So self-care is a phrase that's been used a whole lot, but right now, I don't care how many times you've heard it, this is the time to make sure you are taking care of you so that you can in turn take care of the children who may be in your care. And so for me, that looks like this. I've got 2 friends every week. We get together 3 times a week virtually. We laugh, we swap stories, we encourage each other. Laughter is the key piece, though. So I can talk about the difficulty teaching my 6-year-old new math. And I know that there's a tens frame and all of that, but let me tell you, last week she learned how to carry the 1 because that's the way her Baba learned how. So in order to, again, do well for these children, it's important for us to take care of ourselves. So there are 3 things I want to leave you with and then leave some space for questions. 1, this is remote learning. It will not be perfect. It will not be perfect. It will not be perfect. Doesn't matter if you are an educator and you've been doing this for 50 years, it will not be perfect. And there's this expectation, though, that some people have placed on both the teachers who are home, the administrators who are home, and the parents who are home to be perfect. No, cut yourself some slack. I've been doing this virtual work for 5 years as a business, and it's difficult for me. Second thing, listen to your children, find ways to check their emotional pulse. Are they worried? Do they want to know, for instance, what COVID-19 is? And so if you go to my website, you'll see a link to one book. I'll add the other one after we're done with this call. But you'll see a link to one book that really, in the form of pictures, takes young children through what it is. It's not a scientific book, but it can help to really calm their fears. So that's one thing. Also, be willing to check out other resources. By the time we're done with this call, you've gotten lots of different ways to support you in being there for the children. So you can answer that question, are they well? They may not be as well as you'd like for them to be. They'll be certainly better off for your support. And then the third and final thing that I'll share is have a schedule, a routine. You're going to hear this probably again and again and again. It works for us all. But now here's the thing. If you create a schedule, don't fret if you get off schedule. And so I'll give you 2 quick stories, maybe 3 to kind of bring it home. First thing, after our first week of school, I realized that things were not working well for me and Little Miss. That's what I call my 6-year-old. Little Miss and I was ready to transfer her to somebody's school, get her out of mine. I was hoping she'd miss the bus. So that just tells you how difficult that first week was. What I realized, though, is we didn't have a routine. So the first thing I did was have her start wearing her school uniform the next week. Complete shift in how she approached school. The second thing, second story, we were wrapping up some online learning with her teacher. And at the end of that, teacher signed off, and there were 5 little girls who were chatting up 90 to nothing. And I stopped them the first day. I was like, no, that's not what we're doing. Shut this down. The second time it happened that week, I thought to myself, wait a minute, she's missing her friends. And so I sat in the room, I monitored their conversation, but gave them 30 minutes. So she, just like me and my time with my friends to connect, she had that time too. So again, that's the way of maintaining. And the final story is this. We were walking to the park, Washington Park, not far away, had on our masks, had our dog with us, and we saw a beetle on the ground. And so she saw the beetle and was like, what's that? And I said, it's a beetle. She's like, a beetle? What's a beetle? I said, well, it's a type of bug. Don't kill it, because she's known for just squashing. I said, don't kill it. In fact, when we get back for your reading, instead of what has been assigned, let's find books on beetles. And so we spent the rest of the afternoon. She read everything that she needed to read in terms of time-wise and it was about the beetle. Was it exactly what the teacher wanted? Nope. But guess what? I'm the superintendent of this school. Any questions, comments, feedback? Again, delighted to have this opportunity to share.
I love the getting dressed for school, because I put in the comments, it's like a Jedi mind trick that if I'm getting dressed, that I'm about to go and learn, or I'm about to go do something. I'm not about to lay around and lounge. I'm in that mindset already. And I love using real life experiences, because that's what we do in school anyway. We try to make it relatable for the students, but allowing her to come back and her reading was about beetles and the research. I think those are great practical strategies that, one, she's already interested in it, so she's going to be engaged. And two, you have given her a way to really use all of her skills in terms of research and reading in a real life way. So there's a means to an end. It's not just a, hey, I need to learn how to read. And that's what schooling really is all about. It's how we're going to use the strategies we're taught in school. How we're going to use that foundation to function in real life. So thank you for sharing that. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we're in good time. So we're going to move on now to Mr. William Troy Curry. And he has been in education for about 12 years. And I'm turning it over to him now so he can introduce himself and some of the great things that he's doing.
Troy Curry, or William Troy Curry, former executive director of various programs, and I do a lot of work with my own organization called STEM Wars, and really looking to reignite the educational system, and using this pandemic to actually build on many of the practices that we've already been implementing. And just wanted to share some of those tips with you guys today. We've been doing a lot of research and working with a lot of school districts over this time to really talk about some things that nationally are going on in the industry and what they're doing and what they've learned from other pandemics like Ebola and other school systems that have been shut down. The majority of the school systems that I'm working with are in lower income Southwest Atlanta areas where they have access to limited resources and the students at home have access to limited resources. And so what we've really been talking about is trying to figure out how, as Dr. Burks said, how to keep students engaged during this trying time. And also how we put realistic expectations on the teachers, because while they have to shift gears and it's switching to online learning, we don't want them to have to necessarily learn a whole new skill set while also implementing what they have to actually engage the students. And so the three things I want to talk through, or the 3 points I want to talk from, are equitable access to learning materials. And so we want to make sure, as I'm speaking to the instructors now, or the educators, making sure that our students have access to resources and that we're equitable about our expectations. And so starting from scratch, I would like to encourage the teachers to do. So I know we had a full school year up until this point, but basically put all that stuff behind us. And that's what we've actually implemented with our son in our household, while he's had a great run at school. This is basically a whole new school semester, a whole new way of thinking, a whole new way of educating and learning. And so what are the practices that we're going to put in place during this new time? And so what are the new matrices and measurables and timelines that we're actually going to implement? So again, not a full 8-hour school day, but this will be shortened. And what does this look like? His school is doing very well of providing daily online curriculum with actual Zoom presentations and FaceTime with his teacher and classmates. But we've also implemented supplemental learning and actually talking to him and having an outline of what that actually looks like. So this is the day, and this is what we'll be doing. This is your school time. This is time for your school designated homework. But then also, what does this homeschooling piece look like? And what additional information and supplemental information we want to provide to ensure he's not only prepared for his next grade level, but hopefully even advanced despite the circumstances that we're faced with. But a really creative thing that we've done as well is we're actually doing some other activities and really bringing the learning to life. And so my wife is working with him and actually teaching him baking. So he's getting an aspect of home ec. So where the learning is there, we're still talking about heat and conduction and things of that nature, but making it more realistic and hands-on for him, where we're doing a lot of outdoor stuff, tying it into his class lessons, but taking hikes, teaching him how to fish, doing a bunch of nature walks, and honestly, just observing nature in totality. So not just the simple walking, but as Dr. Burks said, we have birds in a nest right outside of our door. And so we're actually daily checking on them, learning that process, seeing what that looks like, and just engaging him and keeping his mind sharp and using a lot of critical thinking. So asking, why are they doing this? Why do you think the parents are doing that? Why do you think they chose this location? But again, using our natural resources to keep the education going and the engagement there. And we found that to be very, very successful. We're also using some of our partners, like Fun Weird Science, for example. He hosts various virtual online workshops. And so while I'm no scientist or chemist, I don't really want to blow up things in my house and kind of deal with that mess. And so we're using these online resources. They are very, very, very hands-on and very, very innovative, where he actually does these hands-on shows. He sends you a kit in advance of the workshop. And then once you get that, you're able to look it over, view the materials, and then perform various activities simultaneously with him as the instructor. So again, the goal is not to put extra work on the parents or the teachers, because we know that during this time, everybody's dealing with a lot. This isn't just, I've been seeing this meme going around that says, if you don't come up with a new skill.
Troy, excuse me, come closer to the mic. Something happened with your sound. We can hear you, but you're low. A little bit. Something must have happened. But keep going. I mean, we can hear you. It's just low. Yes, it's just low, but we can hear you, so keep going.
Give me 2 seconds. I'm gonna try something. Let me say that.
So while he is, and I see that someone put funweirdscience.com down there. So while he is getting his mic set back up, sometimes with technology, we will lose people. So again, allowing space for grace. But if you look in the comments down there, and if you just take a moment, he spoke a little bit about funweirdscience.com and talking about the free virtual resources that are provided weekly. So I think he was getting ready to really talk about how you can utilize, even if it's not your strength, utilizing strengths of others. They could be your neighbors, or they could be other people that you know in the family, or things you find online, but utilizing those to help fill in those gaps of learning. Okay, Troy.
All right. Yep, so exactly, just like you were saying, can you hear me a little better now? A little better. Can you hear me better now?
I can actually hear you. It's just low, so you can continue. Yes.
Yeah, my volume's only up, and I apologize. But yes, resources like Fun Weird Science, where again, it might not necessarily be your strength, but actually using those tools that are available to ensure that the learning process is still taking place. Amazon also has an incredible suite of free resources where they host free webinars on related topics to remote learning, as well as basically a step-by-step guideline for teachers on how to create virtual class hours, so that way you can engage your students as a whole, but then also have smaller chat groups with various groups or smaller groups of individuals to ensure that they actually get the message, because we do realize that not all students learn at the same pace. And so this is an incredible opportunity or resource for teachers to be able to break your group down or your class down into groups and provide a similar lesson or the same lesson, but in manageable pieces, so that way you can engage them at their respective levels. It's been a really, really incredible tool at Dallas' school. So you guys might want to use that as a resource as well. And then also the third thing I want to encourage some teachers to do, because school and parents, because we realize that over the past 50 years, the educational system has changed so much. School is not just a place for learn your ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. It's really a family, and as Dr. Burks was saying, our students and even our teachers really need that social engagement while we're socially distancing. And so being able to connect with other resources and understand the holistic nature of our school system. And so there are a lot of programs that are providing free food during this time. And so I want to make sure that you have those programs, and even programs like another partner of ours is I'm a Father First. They're actually literally driving around doing food delivery to homes. But more importantly, they're still maintaining the mentorship program that they started 2 years ago, where they're actually looking for other resources and other means to reach out to the students that they've been serving. And so they're still connecting with the students and still serving as surrogate big brothers and big sisters to our known community, because we know that school and the educational system was a safe haven for so many students. And so they're ensuring that they're able to still provide those resources and that level of support for the students during this very, very trying time. And so again, you just want to make sure you're using innovative resources to keep the students engaged during this time, thinking outside the box, and not holding all this responsibility on yourself during this time, because it is a lot. But then also using, as I said, supplemental resources, not just for academics, but ensuring that our students' other needs are met. So those are kind of my talking points. Sorry about the volume. But just thank you for sharing the platform. I hope it was helpful and beneficial.
Troy, you gave some, you're loud and clear now. It came right back in after you talked about the free food programs, which we did not hear the name of the companies or organizations. So if you can just tell us that, what are those free food programs?
Yep. So a main one is Goodr, Goodr. They're providing free food, and they have Goodr Goodr with Jasmine Crow, and they have on their website, you can find out how they can actually deliver food to you, your school, or your students. Atlanta Public Schools has several locations set up around the city, but the one I did mention was I'm a Father First with Keith Lewis, and the great work that they're doing. They're not only delivering free food, they're also continuing their mentorship outreach. And so if you have students who are experiencing any kind of difficulty, primarily African-American males, they have mentors in place that are still actually calling the students, FaceTiming them, and keeping them engaged, and basically keeping them uplifted during this trying time, because we know that their problems haven't gone away. In many instances, our students' problems have been compounded during this pandemic. And so they're really reaching out to address the social and emotional needs. And I know I don't want to run over time, but another organization that provides for great social and emotional awareness is Dangers of the Mind. Dangers of the Mind. Christina, I apologize. The last name. Dangers of the Mind is, and they have literally a million online resource and workshops, presentations for addressing the mind, social and emotional learning.
Thank you. So I did put some of the things that Troy was saying. Thank you so much. I put some of the things that he was saying in the chat box. Please feel free to use that chat box if you have a specific question for him outside of this 2 minutes that I'm about to give. So are there any questions or comments for Troy before he signs off? Okay. And again, we're going to have time at the end for sharing as well. So next, we're going to have Miss Christina Rogers, who has been in education for about 17 years, and she's also doing great things that she's going to tell you about at this moment.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello, my name is Christina Rogers. I've been in education about 17 years. I currently serve as an assistant principal in Atlanta Public Schools, and I also am the founder and executive director of a nonprofit organization, Elite Sisterhood, female mentoring program for young ladies in the Atlanta metro area, preparing them for post-secondary options. And this year we have some young ladies on the Carver campus and also on the Thero campus who will be first generation college attendees. And so we give scholarships to all of our graduating seniors, but we have special scholarships in place for those young ladies. And we are extremely proud of them for persevering through this time. That has just become something that we never could have imagined would have happened in our wildest dreams for the seniors, but they are continuing to persevere. I am going to share with you today my strategies for SEL engagement during this time for our parents, our teachers, and our administrators. So I want to know if everyone can see my screen. I have a few tips for you all. And I'm just talking about remaining socially, even though we're socially distant, but remaining emotionally connected. And the quote that comes to mind when I think of this is, education of the mind without education of the heart is no education at all. So even though the scholars are separate from us and physically, we must remember to speak to the whole experience that the scholars would normally have in school. And I'll start with some tips that I have for the parents. And I heard some other parents on the line earlier talk about, you know, try to follow the routine as much as possible. And that is very, very important because are you guys able to hear me? Dr. Ruth, can you hear me? Okay, good. Because what happens is it's already an abrupt change for the scholars, and especially for our younger scholars, they can fall way behind in their schoolwork, which can cause them to have anxiety. So we want to try to follow the routine as much as possible, give them some leniency, but you want to hold them accountable for still managing their time so the assignments do not pile up on them. Also, as parents, it's important that we have checkup conversations with our kids. Just ask them how they're feeling, how they're doing, just away from the schoolwork, something that's not related to school. Ask them how they are really feeling, because we're noticing, I have a brother who works over in DeKalb County, and he told me that they've had a report, an incident of suicide during this time. And it's unfortunate, but being emotionally disconnected all of a sudden for some younger people is a bit much for them to handle. So they definitely need people who are going to be able to check in on them. So parents, I encourage you to have those conversations with with your babies while they're in your house. Implement family time, walks, games, challenges. So sometimes we think that because we have been confined to our houses that we're actually spending time with each other. So being in the same house does not necessarily mean that we're spending family time together. We want to block out some time that you're actually just completely focused on nothing else, but the cell phones away, the computers up. Unless it's something that you're all doing together, be very intentional about spending that quality time with your families. And then also using FaceTime and leveraging Zoom opportunities so that your babies, your children have the opportunity to see their family members, to see their classmates and their friends. The smiles that come up on their faces when they're able to actually engage with each other, it's just priceless. So just making sure that you're leveraging technology and the best platform to keep them connected to each other. In regards to my teachers who are on the call, I would really encourage you all to begin your class time with reflective quotes or questions to engage your scholars. Understand that some of them have family members that are directly impacted by COVID. And so this is an opportunity for you to kind of do a checkup before you get right into the instruction. What it does is make the scholars understand that you are really listening to them and that they are still physically somehow connected to you, even though you cannot be in their presence. It is so important to gauge what your scholars' emotional states are before you just go straight into the instruction. And you can come back and leverage some of the conversation you have with those quotes or questions at the beginning throughout your lesson. I would also provide opportunities for scholars to engage in discourse throughout your lessons if you're doing face-to-face virtual teaching, and provide feedback to each other to build on their skills. So I had an opportunity to sit in an 11th grade ELA course this past Thursday, and it was a room full of young men, and they were engaged in dialogue, going back and forth over a Shakespearean play and debating some of the characters' motives. And the teacher was just facilitating the conversation. But what I loved about it was that the scholars were actually able to feed off of each other's opinions. They were actually able to debate each other's opinions. And again, this gives them that type of connectedness that they would still receive if they were sitting in a classroom, so that the learning situation is not too different for them. Teachers can also hold office hours and do Wednesday wellness checkups on scholars. So Wednesday doesn't have to be the day. It could be any day of the week. just do some calls and checkups just to see if you have scholars with low attendance. Give them a call, give them a text, check up on them, see how they are doing. And then also, if your school is hosting any type of virtual spirit weeks, the scholars would love to see the teachers participating. It lets them know that you're still connected to them, even in this distant platform. For administrators, I would create a weekly teaching schedule for the teachers and hold everyone tight to this time, because a lot of teachers have families of their own. And so as administrators, we have to respect the fact that teachers need to be present with their scholars during the regularly scheduled time, but they also need to have protected time outside of those hours so that they can be parents as well, if that is their reality. And if it's not their reality, then they still have some other things that they need to take care of. Provide teacher shout outs during your faculty meetings or your PLCs to let the teachers know that you are popping into their virtual classrooms. Let them know that you are checking on them and that they are doing a great job. This is a learning curve, not only for the scholars, but for the teachers as well. They are juggling a lot. They are learning and providing learning opportunities as they go. So keeping them encouraged. Administrators can also leverage group needs or the Zooms or Google Classrooms to encourage various teams of teachers in their PLCs, or just give different announcements that may not pertain to the entire group. And finally, as administrators, we can conduct town halls with our scholars and our parents to reassure them that we are still here supporting them. Yes, we want them to be academically successful, and we're going to put all of the support structures in place for that to happen. But at the same time, having town halls in which you are acknowledging the scholars for the work that they are doing, and always using some type of SEL component to to let you know that those wraparound services are still available for the scholars. And in regards to the resources, I will share those with Dr. Hill, but I know one of the resources that is invaluable to me is CASEL. They have a ton of SEL resources for parents, teachers, and administrators. They have videos and tips for parents as well, and I'll put that in the comment section as well.
CASEL is also on our website, so it's there. So that's great information, Ms. Rogers. Thank you for sharing. Are there any questions or comments for Ms. Rogers? We have quite a few in the chat box. Just to add to what you were saying in terms of providing that space for them to connect, also providing a chat room outside within your discussion boards for teachers, where they can just ask any question and they're responsible for answering each other's questions, but just giving them a space where they can connect with someone outside of you, just like they would in the classroom. They would ask each other questions, but providing them that space. And also with teachers, we talked a lot about self-care and checking in with students, checking in with teachers. We have families, we have our own, but I love those creating that weekly teaching schedule. And I would add to that is creating like a weekly huddle, maybe 5 or 10 minutes where you just come in and huddle, and it's not about teaching. It's just, how are you guys doing? Who has something great that happened to them this week? Who was reminded of their why this week? You know, just and it doesn't have to be school related, but giving people time to really celebrate wins and success.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much. So now we're going to go to Miss Lisa Printup, and she has been in education for almost 20 years. So lots of knowledge. I don't want to say 2 decades because I'm right there with her, but it's a lot of knowledge. So I'm going to allow her to talk to you about some of the great things she's doing, as well as her tips and
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Lisa Printup. I am the coordinator for Social Studies and Fine Arts in Rockdale Schools, which is just 20 minutes east of Atlanta. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. Let's see. Oh. Okay. Well, I'm trying to get to my web browser. Can you guys give me a thumbs up and let me know if you can see what's on the screen? Awesome, awesome. So I'm going to talk to you about supporting and leading professional learning in a virtual environment and just offer some tips for success. There are a lot of things that I've heard today that are no different when we're talking about providing PL opportunities for our teachers, as well as for our administrators. This week in my district, we just had our Teaching and Learning Division retreat to kind of wrap up this school year and plan for next school year. Our division consists of about 50 people, and that's a breakdown of about 6 departments. It was a great experience because we had an opportunity to, number one, get to know each other on a different level, because that's very important when you're not face-to-face with each other. You don't have the funny stories of this happened in my classroom today to talk about. So I began every session with mindfulness. And I advise that if you're providing professional learning, if you're dropping into PLC meetings, as my colleagues before me have shared, just check in and ask, how are you doing? How's your family doing? What are you binge watching on Netflix? Have you tried any new recipes during this time, or are you focusing on a specific skill? That little bit goes a long way, and it actually helps connect everyone during this time, but helps us set our intentions for where we are, how we're dealing with this pandemic, and then allows us an opportunity to continue with our work. I recommend evaluating your professional learning plan. We all have one at the start of the year, and it does adjust throughout the year. Even though we are learning during a time of crisis, we still have things that our superintendents, our principals, our teams need us to complete this year, but also prepare for next year. You don't have to change your PL plan unless there's something very specific that has come about during this time that you feel needs to be addressed with faculty and staff. As a leader, teacher leader, administrator, principal, superintendent, have capacity, have clarity, identify the purpose of the sessions that you're going to have with your teachers, so that they understand this is not just one more thing. We are living through this crisis, but when we come out of the end of this crisis, hopefully we will have learned a lot of things. We would have made some shifts in education, but we also need to be prepared for what the other side of this crisis looks like. Figure out if you want to have a live session or if you want to have an on-demand session. Also figure out, are you just sharing information or are you having a work session? The answers to those questions will help you identify how much time you need. Most people recommend anywhere from 30 minutes to 60-minute sessions for virtual professional learning. Your 30-minute sessions are going to be more of your sit and get, here I have a bunch of information to share with you, and at the end, let's ask and answer questions. Your longer sessions are going to be the ones where you have a work session. So in my retreat, for example, we actually were looking at the work that we did this previous year, and we were making adjustments to that work and creating an action plan for how all of our departments were going to execute this work once we return to school. Know the value of the types of sessions that you select. There's a lot of information running around looking at asynchronous virtual learning versus synchronous virtual learning. And I would advise this for classroom sessions as well with students is there's room for both, but we have to be very intentional about the blend of our learning. So if it's going to be live, then we do want people to be interactive because we want them to engage. We don't want them just to have the device playing and then they go off and they do something else in their home. We want them to feel like this is a value add to what they're doing right now. It's a value add to their time. For on-demand, there also is an opportunity to give people a chance who do have families, who do have to teach the students in their district, but then also have to teach the students in their home so that they can check in later on as well. I do recommend recording everything because even if you have 100% attendance for each session, you still want people to have the opportunity to go back and review to make sure that they heard what it is that they thought they heard once they've had some time to reflect. Avoid any new tools during your virtual professional learning, because there's a very thin line between a PL session and a technology session, both for the presenter and for the attendees. If I'm trying something new and I'm having some difficulty, that's going to take time out of my session. But also, if it's something that's new and I'm successful, then everyone's going to want to know, hey, how do you do that? And then it becomes about that new tool and not about the work at hand or about the information that you're sharing or about the training that's at hand. We talked a little bit about connecting with your audience. So I shared those 3 questions. You don't have to have people answer those verbally during your meeting. Having them answer those questions in the chat is pretty amazing, because you have some people that now can connect with their coworkers, they can connect with their colleagues, and they can actually chat with one another about some things that they have in common. A really great story from our retreat. There were 2 people who connected who I don't think they had ever spoken prior to the retreat, but there was some question that was asked that they answered very similarly, and they realized that they were kind of each other's spirit animals, and now they're going to be more likely to communicate with each other once we return to our new normal. Lastly, be adaptable. We're all doing the best that we can during this time, and we have the best laid plans. I'm a person who plans minute by minute, and I might even write down time increments, but sometimes we have to make those adjustments because we're working with people, we're working with technology. Sometimes we have guest stars when we're leading these virtual sessions with either our pets or our children or anyone who might also be online, and people pop up in the screen. So be adaptable based on any needs and any nuances, because we're all doing the best that we can during this time. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Anything to add or to clarify?
There are a few in the comment section, just like, this is really great information, and I want to make a comment around the whole need to connect with your audience, and that's been kind of our underlying theme, is that we're all human in this, so we have to have space, and we have to have grace, and we have to be flexible and adapt to it, but at the same time of having that structure, making sure that we're connecting with each other on a human level. I know more about my colleagues now than I knew before this pandemic, because we're able to see each other in environments where our kids come in on meeting times, or we're just checking to see, hey, how are you doing? What's going on with your family? So we have more fruitful conversations. So making those connections are important. I also think you pointed out the need for both live and on demand, or synchronous and asynchronous. A lot of times in the traditional setting, we had 1 hour, 2 hour meetings, unnecessary. But now we have a platform where we can have 30-minute or 5 or 10-minute, here's information that you need that can be recorded beforehand. But if it's a collaborative activity or learning, then maybe we pull them in on synchronous sessions, and that's what's live. But everything that we do on Zoom platform, this platform, we can pretty much do traditionally, or we have a platform at work that we can work with, whether it is Office 360 or Teams, where we can go into small breakout sessions. We can moderate the chat. They can turn and talk just like they still do. But I really thank you for providing just the encouragement to continue your PL schedule. And even you might adjust it to see, okay, well, how does that coincide with what's going on now? How do we, because I know we changed some things in terms of when we came into this profession, we weren't taught in teacher prep programs how to have online classes. We kind of just learned it because that's what we do as teachers, and we adapt. But some PL might be useful around how to teach in an online environment. I hate seeing myself on the screen. I hate hearing myself talk. And if somebody out there is like me, throw it in the comment box. Because when you play it back, you're like, oh my God, I said that, ew. But that's a hurdle to get over as well. This is some new stuff we're dealing with. So thank you for encouraging us to continue to plow through it and learn and grow, because that's what professional development or professional learning is all about, is that growing. And growing is messy. It's messy for students and it's messy for adults. And we really have to give each other the space to grow. Anybody else have any comments?
Ruth, I will share that the infographic that I used, I shared in the comments with you all. So it's available for you to download. And if you'd like a bigger version, I'm happy to share the link to my Easily site so that you can access it on demand.
Yep. Well, thank you. If you have any questions for her, please put it in the comment box. I see we do have one. Tanya?
Hi, my apologies. I was on late with the ever-changing learning how to balance work and family life together. But the only question I have is, will this be, or has this been recorded so that we may have an opportunity to review it?
Yes. So if you register, then you will get a link back. Also, I have a YouTube channel, which is, if you just go to YouTube and type in Dr. Ruth Alisha Hill, you'll see the EdCamp from 2 weeks ago, and then this one will be posted by in the morning.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you all for doing this.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to get into some learning with our last facilitator. We are at 4:56. We should wrap this up no later than about 5:10, 5:15, so we're over about 10 minutes. But I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Marques Stewart, who's also been in education for almost 20 years. This is his 19th year. So as you see, you have a wealth of knowledge. I mean, together combined, we probably have at least 60 years or over 60. I'm an ELA teacher, combined of experience and expertise. So, Mr. Stewart, would you please let us know about all the great things that you are doing?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm definitely excited to be here. I feel like I don't have anything else to say because everyone has shared everything that I want to say today. So I'm excited. For me, I've been in education, as Dr. Hill said, I've been in education 19 years, spending as a teacher, a school turnaround principal, and now serving at Douglas High School as an assistant principal. And I just recently launched my consulting company, Finish Strong Educational Innovations, where we're helping leaders and teachers to grow around the country. So we're excited about that. But today, when I think about where we are right now in the state of education, this is an exciting time for me. Although we're in a pandemic with the coronavirus, I think this paradigm is definitely going to shift education to where it should be, where it should have been long ago. When I look at, if you think about just things that have happened over the course of time, look at how things have changed. Look at telephones. Remember, we had the rotary phone. Went from the rotary phone to the cordless phone, to the cordless phone to the payphone. Now we have cell phones that are smartphones, so they're doing a lot. When you look at how we used to save things back in the days, remember the big floppy disk with the big circle in the middle? And then we shifted from that to the 3.5-inch disk, and also now we're saving things in the cloud. So when I think about all the things that have changed over the last, I've been here around 41 years, how things have changed. And now education, we really are now forced to change to meet the learners where they are now, and which most of them are all at home. And so when I look at things that are happening now, when we're forcing kids to utilize technology in a number of different ways, and we have what's called a digital divide now. And I saw a superintendent who posted something a few days ago, and she mentioned if there's one thing she's concerned about by being on the front lines, that Wi-Fi should be something that everyone has. It should be just as much as we need water and electricity. And so when I think about a number of the kids that I serve, a lot of them do not have the devices or they don't have internet at home. So this has forced us as educators to really push out things to children to support them, whether it's a hotspot or whether it's a device. But then parents, I definitely think this is an interesting time for us all. Me having a 6-year-old and having to work and have to, do differentiating instruction with her here at home. That has been something that's interesting. But parents, I would advise you, if you're having anything that you may, any resources that you're looking for students, I would also advise you go to YouTube. YouTube has a lot of things as it relates to education. Also in the area of math, Khan Academy is there, where it provides a lot of free resources and also a lot of live demonstrations for students. Something that we're seeing today in our buildings, our children are using Google Classroom. Google Classroom has a plethora of options for students and teachers. So that's something that is very huge. I think it's definitely going to be a game changer for us. As it relates to professional learning, from what we see at our building, we're doing PLCs weekly on Zoom. And it's really, to me, in my personal opinion, what I see now, the PLCs are much more organic and much more intentional now, because teachers are, when we look at the technology, looking at what resources work best to support our learners. And so that has been something that I really feel has really benefited our team. I know at Frederick Douglass High School, and I know across the country, people are doing something similar. Also, for our students, we're doing, just to check in, we're popping into live sessions. I heard someone mention earlier the live sessions. We're going in, and believe it or not, the kids actually miss school. The kids are logging on. Our teachers are having conversations with them just to see how they're doing, checking in with them before the actual lesson starts. And I think that goes a long way. So there are a lot of things that kids are struggling with, and our teachers are there ready to prepare for them to assist and make sure they're successful in that. One thing, if you're noticing, educators, if you're struggling with getting kids online, go to social media, go to Instagram, hit them up in the DM. That's one way you can attract kids to get engaged in their learning. I know our teacher just started an Instagram page last week, and it has about 61 followers last time I checked, and they got that in over 2 days. So we're trying to expand upon that to get more kids involved and engaged in what's going on in the schools. And I think now we're the time we have to be creative and innovative. And as educators, it's our time to do that. We have to shine now. Even though we're at home, we miss our babies not being face-to-face with them, but we have to find ways to continue to engage them. And one last thing, parents, Xfinity, Spectrum, there's Xfinity, Spectrum, MediaCom, and Suddenlink, they are providing free internet services for 60 days. So if you know of any students who may not have access to the internet, please contact Xfinity, Spectrum, MediaCom, or Suddenlink. They are providing those services free for 60 days to help benefit and also to help close that digital gap. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with everyone today. So I look forward to continuing the dialogue.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Stewart? He brought up some really good points so that we can learn without borders, everything that's available out there. Are there any questions remaining? So in the chat box, we did have a question that's open, that's going to be open for discussion, because I really want us to get into that. And the question was, in what ways can we help students who are already 2 or 3 grade levels behind in reading and haven't physically seen or been able to engage with their teachers virtually since COVID-19? Does anybody want to start out with possible solutions for helping those kids who are already 2 to 3 grade levels behind, who hasn't seen or been able to engage with their teachers at all?
There's a couple of resources that I know of. Number one, as a teacher, I know we are all aware of student Lexile levels, and I believe there's a resource called News ELA that also helps to scaffold text for students. So once you find out their Lexile level, you can assign text to help build them up from there. Also in math, I would also again go back to Khan Academy. That is a very rich resource that we can use to help meet students where they are and to build them up. But Google, with the Google Classroom and being able to drop different links from different resources to help meet kids where they are, that's definitely another tool that will be able to assist in closing that gap.
I would also add, with those wonderful resources, that if you have any type of print in your home, I don't care if it's the back of a can or a ingredient box. Color Purple is my favorite movie. And when Nettie was teaching Celie how to read, and they labeled the stove and they labeled the screen door, those are essential skills that our ancestors used to learn English. Those are skills that some of our grandparents or great-grandparents used. I would say that even if you're not a teacher and you're a parent, have your child, just give them something simple to read. And if you don't have books at your house already, hit me up. I have a library, I have a basement full of books on all grade levels, in all subject areas, that I will be happy to drop off to you as well, or put in the mail for you. And I'm serious about that. Hit me up. But you have magazines at your house. You have newspapers at your house. You have your phone at your house. Bring up an article. Have them read it, even if they were to go to News ELA. And every time they stumble upon a word, every time they mispronounce a word, then jot it down, because you're helping them to build up their fluency. It'll also help you gauge, okay, is my child fluent? Can they, and then ask them questions about what they read. See if it makes sense with their explanation. See if they make sense back to you. So I would say for those kids, I'm gonna say it. This is probably a good thing, because now you have the time and space to even see what your child knows. You have the time and space that even if your school hasn't given you a curriculum to follow, having that conversation, going back to what I said in the beginning, sitting down, setting expectations. Baby, can you read? Are you struggling with math? My 8th grader, math, we get tutoring for math. So right now we're working on financial literacy. I need him to know how to balance a checkbook. I need him to know how to do his taxes. I need him to know what interest is. I need him to be able to calculate when it says 20% off. I need him to be able to do that. Now, I think I'm a great parent, but I was leaving a lot of that to the school because I have a full-time job and my own business. But now I have the time to be like, hey, baby, I'm about to pay the bills. Come sit in here with me and let me show you why I'm paying this credit card off. Let me show you why I'm trying to get the student loan paid off. See how much interest they're charging me? See how much my principal is? See how much I paid last month? And see how much this did not decrease? So having those real conversations, I think making real life experiences teachable moments will help with that grade level, even though they haven't seen their teachers. Does anybody else? I'm on my soapbox, y'all. I'm sorry.
So one of the things, first of all, my website has been updated, so you'll see 2 video clips of me having we're preparing breakfast one morning, and we're working on math, because I'm asking her to count the number of eggs and all of that, just to keep it basic, real life, directly applicable. The second is one of me having her help me make brownies. She's been asking for brownies for a week, and so I said, let's make them, read the instructions, right? But there's someone raised a question up in here that I think is important to kind of deal with, which is that there are some parents who struggle, who may not have the ability to take a lesson and do. And that's where I keep going back to, how do we translate things and make them as, and I mean this in the right way, as simple as possible, as clear as possible, so that those who, because think about this, there are people who never show up to our schools, never show up to the facilities that we run, because they had horrible experiences at school. So we have to think about how we sometimes, when we're not careful, can operate from a position of power because the language we use to interact with the adults. And so now we've put all of this work in their minds on them, and they are paralyzed. So I do think it's important to arm parents with resources that are electronic as best you can, but also impress upon them, look, if you don't have this, let's not lose it. Let's use the things that are right around you in your house. A magazine, junk mail that comes in, have them reading. Because here's the thing, the more students are able to read, the better they become at reading. And the more they read, the better they actually become at writing. And so those 2, communication, are really key. I'll pause there because, I'm from a family of preachers. I could go for another hour.
I'm just going to throw one thing in. You said writing. I love writing. I have been writing letters since we have been physically distant. And let me tell you, waiting for letters and cards in the mail from my colleagues and friends, it's like being 12 years old again when we had to wait at the P.O. box or the snail mail. So great way to connect, and a great way to see your students' writing skills, and a great way to sharpen up on your own writing skills as well. Send each other letters, get back to the pen and paper. All right, we have lots of great conversation going on in the chat box, and I really appreciate it. Are you guys able to see the PowerPoint? Okay, great. So I want to just now take the time, because I do value the time that you have given us, but I want to take the time to see if there are any other questions or insights that any participants want to give, any great things that you've probably done. So in a minute or less, if you want to share, like, hey, this is how we're addressing the reading deficits, this is how we are addressing parents who might not be as literate, knowing that we do have lots of things or barriers to address around literacy, period, in the nation. But if there are things that you or your school district are doing to combat the digital divide or to make things feel level, notice I said feel, please share. Thank
Sorry,
you, Tanya.
could you repeat the method you said for us to continue this conversation after this? So again, I know the Zoom will end shortly, but like you said, it is a lot of great conversation in the chat. And so could you repeat how we could continue the conversation?
So I will stay on if we want to continue this conversation here, but I do know that people want to log off. They have things to do. I don't expect that we will solve the world's problems tonight, but we will continue to build on each other's insight and strategies. So I'll stay on at least until 5:30. And then while we're on after that, we can figure out how we can continue the conversation, if it's through Twitter chat using the hashtag #MyEdCamp. But we would definitely continue that conversation if you guys want, but I'll stay on after this. So I just want to open it up to all participants. I think Tanya wanted to share some of the great things that she's doing. And if you are shy about speaking on camera, please put it in the chat box. What are some things that you're doing to help with some of the issues that we're facing?
One of the things I wanted to share, I'm not on here representing my district, but I am 15 years in the game and family and community engagement. I work in DeKalb, and so we are a growing department, pretty much newly revamped. But one of the things we decided this week, I think a lot of us on this call or in this meeting have decided to not so much ask for permission, but ask for forgiveness later if necessary. But we've decided in my department that we would each adopt 5 families to begin with, and not, necessarily in a traditional way, but whatever resources that we know we can get for we'll start with 5. There are only 5 of us, and then we'll grow that. But to adopt them, and they are ours, and it's probably something we're going to continue to do, to make sure they have the resources, whatever it is that that parent needs, whatever it is that the student needs, how we can focus on those 5 families. And how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Because the overarching, every department is doing something. But we just took it upon ourselves to say we're going to go over and beyond what our duties and responsibilities are as employees who serve the community, and what can we do personally to stretch ourselves to lend better support. We started social media pages that we were always, kind of hesitant about starting for one reason or another. So I just, I want to say thank you for doing this. I will definitely review the recording, but I know that we're all stretched, and we continue to stretch and encourage each other. And it's encouraging when you see your fellow educators doing the work that you're doing. So thank you again.
Thank you. And I thank everybody on the call. And I know that, we represent ourselves as individuals, but as educators, we're always representing our district, our jobs. But I want to encourage you to not be afraid to step out and participate in things like this that are ongoing, because you're actually benefiting your district. You are learning and still working, and they're not even paying you for that off time. So everything that you get from these conversations that you have, whether it's my EdCamp, or you are presenting at a conference, or something else, you started your own business, don't ever feel guilty about that, because your profession will benefit from all the knowledge and the network that you are going to build. So continue to learn, continue to network, continue to go after your dreams that are even outside of your career, but related. And don't be afraid to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Alisha, you're muted.
Thank you kindly. So the last slide simply says, what tips, strategies, or resources would you like to share? What support or resources are most helpful to you right now? This might be something you heard. And what are your needs for teaching and working during this time? That third question will help inform us in terms of having more ed conferences. I'm really thinking hard. A couple of people have reached out and asked about having a for teachers by teachers EdCamp. So I think that would probably be the next topic. But if teachers are on the line, then what are your needs for teaching and working during this time? Would you like to present? Do you have any ideas towards it? If you will, you can email me. I'll put my email in the chat box, or also you can follow me on Instagram, send me a direct message, and I'm trying to get to the rest of the presenters. But I really think that this is a great platform for us to all stay connected. The time now is 5:15, and I try to keep my promise and tell people that we'll end at that time. But I want to say thank you to all of the facilitators. They have really given up more than an hour and a half of their life because they got this together for you. They met with me already. But I want to say thank you. Thank you for sharing your insight and being brave and bold to step out and do that outside of your professional career. And I want everybody to take a picture of this screen so that they can connect with each presenter. We have stemwars.org, leadwritetoday.com, and then my learning partners. We've each referenced our websites because we have a lot of information that's there that is free, and we would like to continue to connect with you. Looking at, and I'm going to start from the bottom, please follow at STEM Wars on Instagram. If you love the presentation on professional learning, please follow Virnilisa Printup on Facebook, and it's spelled VIRNILISA, Printup. Also, please follow Dr. Tony Burks at Dr. Tony Burks and at LeadWrite. I believe at LeadWrite is the Twitter. Is that correct? Yes. At LeadWrite is his Twitter account. At Dr. Tony Burks is his Instagram account. And then Christina Rogers is at IM_AP Rogers. IM_AP Rogers. And then Mr. Marques Stewart is at MS_Stewart_2U on Twitter. And on Instagram, he is Finish Strong EI. And then I am Dr. Ruth. That is my Instagram and Twitter. So you please feel free to follow me, and I do follow back, and everybody on the call follows back, all the facilitators. So we'd like to continue to connect with you and continue the conversation. Again, I'm going to stay on for another 12 minutes or so. But I really do thank each and every one of you. I'm going to open it up to the presenters to see if they want to say something before we end this session and stay on the call afterwards.
I'll start it off by just thanking you for sharing this platform with us. As you said, it's a passion for all of us to actually engage students and push the envelope. And so just thank you for sharing this platform and allowing us to share our best practices and honestly just do what we love to do. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to follow up with that same sentiment. It's kind of refreshing to know that on a Sunday afternoon before we return back to our workspaces that we have professionals who are committed to just sharing some ideas and strategies and really in the best interest of the scholars that we serve and wrapping our arms around those parents during this time as well. So thank you for the platform.
I'd like to say thanks for this opportunity. It has been a joy to listen and learn from the leaders on the call. Definitely got some things that I can go back and take back to help myself personally. Dr. Hill, I thank you for the invite, just being a part of it. I think I was more nervous speaking on this than I speak in front of people all the time. So I got those jitters out, but I'm ready to go. Thank you again.
Yes, we feel the same way. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming, and thank you, Dr. Hill, for the opportunity.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for coming. We really do appreciate it. I see some people are signing off already, but again, we're going to hang out and stay back. I do understand that this probably Some people are probably shy about speaking, so what I'm gonna do is hit stop recording as we step into our boldness to share outside of our profession, but I am gonna stop recording, but I'm gonna stay on.